Hi, this is Kylie Carver. I'm the principal at 33 Central School in Fillmore. This video is all about personalized learning and how I've incorporated it into a multi-graded math classroom. I think one of the most difficult parts of personalized learning was just figuring out what exactly is it. And so during my research in my master's program, I came to an understanding that it really has been poorly defined, and the early research on personalized learning, because it's not that old of a concept, was kind of misleading and confusing because people were comparing apples to oranges and it just wasn't conclusive. So terms like blended learning, project-based, brain-based, differentiation, student-centered classrooms, flipped classrooms, all those things could be included in personalized learning, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be. So in the next few slides, I will try and clarify that definition a little bit for you. So, what led me down this path in the first place? A few years ago, I was teaching a 7-8-9 math and a 5-6 math. And of course, a wide range of student ability, a lot of strange resources that just didn't seem to go together. My weaker students demanded so much individual time. My stronger ones were bored, they were unmotivated. So, like many other teachers, I felt pulled in a dozen directions. You attempt to differentiate, infuse literacy, triangulate your evidence, cover those outcomes, meet standards, and somehow make all this fun. And I had just written a paper on scheduling solutions for small schools when I encountered a bit of research on personalized learning, and that was kind of the first that I'd heard of it. That spring, I just happened upon a conference where a teacher and 3 of his students gave a really great presentation on their experience with personalized learning, and I thought, I have to try this. Okay, here comes all the research. Yay! In 1892, the Committee of 10 decided that educational standards of the time, which was in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, should really meet the needs of those learners. And so they came up with a 12-year program and had standardized grades. They were in compartmentalized chunks. Each subject was separate, and really things have not changed much since that time. So it is hard to ignore that there's a disconnect between the informational revolution that we are currently in the middle of and the lack of change that we've had since 1892. Although it is hard to deny that education really hasn't changed much since 1892, we can see that our students have changed tremendously. And how can we make changes within our classroom, within those same constructs, in those same factory-style buildings, with current curriculum, and make those adjustments that 21st century learners need? So personalized learning really does align with the goals of 21st century learning. Students are able to be creative and open-minded and flexible. There's a lot more communication and collaboration going on. So there's been tons of educational reform going on, maybe more so in the States than in Canada, but it seems like whatever projects are put forth and whatever changes are suggested, really we're still stuck in that same sort of 1892 system. One researcher pointed out that students' passive receptivity to learning with a lack of emotional and cognitive engagement is perceived as apathy, and that's something that I hear teachers talk about all the time, and even community members, that students don't care, they're apathetic, they're just there to get the degree or the diploma and get going. But Gregory and Caulfield actually put the cause on instructional mediocrity. So if teachers aren't able to engage students in things that they're interested in, we've lost them, we're sunk. So personalized learning has the potential to address that paradox and turmoil and change the structure of education in subtle or radical ways depending on the level of commitment from teachers, school districts, and curriculum designers. As research continues to build and research capabilities, especially in the areas of neuroscience, even just in the last 5 or 10 years, we have been able to learn so much more about how kids learn. And there's lots of evidence to show that due to technology and the things that kids are exposed to early, they're actually learning in much different ways than what you and I probably learned when we were in school. In a nutshell, we have a 19th century curriculum with 20th century buildings and organizations and 21st century students facing an undefined future. We are training students right now in our classrooms for jobs that don't even exist right now. And so the future is completely wide open to them, and providing a compact, closed curriculum is really a disservice to our students. The skills that they're going to need in the 21st century have more to do with the soft skills of creativity, innovation, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, and along those lines, the P21 group, Partnership for 21st Century Learning, really identifies some key themes: global awareness, financial literacy, civic literacy, health literacy, and environmental literacy. So personalized learning is a strategy that we can use as teachers to get our students to the place where they need to be in the 21st century. Here's a little compare and contrast of classrooms of yesterday and today. Now, if you're looking at that 20th century classroom and you're feeling guilty that, you know, I do lead instruction and I do have a bell schedule in my room, don't feel guilty, because personalized learning has to happen within the constructs that you have in your own building and within your own comfort level, and really according to your clientele in the classroom. And so if you are using, you know, a textbook or a worksheet, don't feel guilty. That is not the point of this presentation at all, and those items still have a place within personalized learning. And the other film here, the blended learning classroom, if you are not 100% student driven or student centered, that's okay too, because this whole presentation is to point out one thing, is that personalized learning really has to happen on a continuum, and some days you'll be more teacher driven and some days you'll be more student centered, and that is completely 100% okay. Current research really makes a strong connection between a personalized environment where students have choice to their success in the classroom. And so increasing choice increases intrinsic motivation. And so although, like Farlazo here cautions that it is not a magic bullet, it is something that is worth pursuing. And even Carol Ann Tomlinson, who is the guru of assessment, she approaches personalized learning with a little bit of discomfort. She said, the definition has been molded and marred and merged to the point of mass confusion. It is not a silver bullet, but what they have is an idea that could nurture something more educationally promising than most of what we've seen over the previous 2 decades. So Tomlinson really sees the value of personalized learning as, one, a method of differentiation, but also something that can really engage kids in our classroom and make learning more relevant to their 21st century lives. Tomlinson also cautions that you really need to be informed and reflective on your process in the classroom. Which brings me to my reflections. There are a lot of challenges and limitations that you need to understand before you undertake personalized learning in your own classroom. Cursier even calls it dangerous if you don't. So probably the first risk involved is you're letting go of a lot of control as a teacher. And so it's going to be noisy, it's going to be messy, there might be failure, there might be resistance, and that constant reflection of your teaching practice is really essential to getting a good balance of personalization. Farlazo assures us that the chaos is worth it. If you're going to look like kindergarten cop there, it's okay, because what kind of experience do you want to create for your students? A prepackaged antiseptic tour or an adventure-filled journey? We are living in the era of accountability, that is for sure. And so personalization, for some people, it really has become the antithesis of standardization. And so It can be, but they can also have a harmonious relationship. So just because you're personalizing your classroom doesn't mean that standardization goes completely out the window. Again, there's that sliding control of whether it's teacher-centered or student-centered. And then a lot of teachers have questions about how do you evaluate this if you're letting students explore and develop their own curriculum or come up with their own projects. How do you put a mark on that? And so it's really important that that's where the planning element comes into your teaching, and there's a lot of co-constructing that can happen with your assessment, and there are tons of ways that you can still cover that curriculum and meet those outcomes, but provide students with an awful lot of choice in the meantime. Now, what if your classroom is this barren wasteland with not a lot of resources, not a lot of technology, not a lot of options for flexible seating or group work or stations or whatever? You can still personalize some parts of your instruction. So like I said, you have to personalize within the constructs of what you've been given. And so depending on your school division, depending on the needs of your students and whether they're able to work together in groups, if this was your classroom, you might choose to start really small and work your way into personalization sort of gradually, because that would be a huge change. So the other part of that is if you don't have access to technology, you can still personalize your classroom, because a lot of people think that personalized learning is just the use of technology, but that's not entirely true. You can completely personalize your classroom without any technology at all. It would probably be a lot more work, but it can be done. And so you are restricted by your physical location, your resources, your computer access, your student ability, your administrative support, your curriculum, the teacher ability, how comfortable you are with technology, your budget, and dozens of other rigid factors within the education system. So you can make worthwhile upgrades to any one of these aspects and still personalize small bits of your program. Here is the meat of my research. This chart I'll present in 3 different slides, but basically it shows that sliding control between a traditional and a personalized classroom. So on the left-hand side, the teacher has complete control, and students are just passive recipients of the information. And on the right side, it's completely student-controlled, and the teacher is just there as a guide. So what kind of things could you personalize in your classroom? Because even making small changes in any one of these areas could really provide students with a lot of motivation and a lot more engagement in your classroom. So perhaps you're going to personalize the goal. What do you want your students to know and do? Is that something that can be up to them, or is that something that needs to be more up to you? Is the goal connected to curriculum? Is it just their personal interest, or something that they need to personally develop, or is it something that's coming up on a standardized test? So you can see the goal sometimes changes, and it can be adjusted depending on the setting. Seating. So when we looked at that classroom on the last slide, there was desks in straight rows. It looked like students weren't even present, but if they were, it looked like they were maybe confined to sitting in straight rows. Are they able to work from outside the classroom? Could they work from home or anywhere on the globe? How are you going to arrange your group members? Is that something that the teacher completely 100% controls, or is that something that you can personalize and give student control over? Are you going to base it on what they're all interested in or what their abilities are, or are they going to group themselves together based on who their friends are? The topic, is it related to the goal? Are you going to dig deep on your topic, or are you just kind of cover the basics? Are you going to allow students to dig in deep where they find an interest? How are you going to assess this? How do you know if your students have achieved it, and who has input into the assessment criteria? So if you give your students a project and you tell them they are in charge of deciding the assessment criteria, I bet you they do a really good job of it. They're usually harder on themselves than we are. And instruction. What methods do you want to choose? Do all the students get the same method? Is it something that's varied? Is it interesting to them? Is it connected to those 6 C's of 21st century learning? Who decides what standards you need to meet? Is it related to the curriculum? Is it actually achievable? Is it vitally important to that student's future, or is it something that the student can adjust based on what they need in life? Curriculum. Does the student have a choice of outcomes? Is there modules? Maybe it's a special credit project which is completely decided by a student, which provides a lot of motivation because it's something that they're interested in. Cross-curricular connections. If you are teaching elementary, you might have a little bit more luck with this because you teach more than one subject. So maybe you can weave that outcome into another subject. Is there some other connection that can be made? How much technology do you plan on using? Are there devices that your students are allowed to use or not allowed to use? Is technology limiting their choices or being a frustration in any way? Or in some classes, is your technology just used to get the job done? And it's not really an engaging method, it's just we have a computer, so we're going to use it. The timeline. This is one thing I wish I could be more flexible on with all of my students, because every kid learns at their own pace, and some students want to take their time with a project and they really want to dig deep. Some students really need that extra time because they don't understand, and some kids fly through it in 15 minutes and are looking for the next available thing. So whenever you can adjust the timeline and make things more flexible that way, I think you'll have better buy-in from your students. The audience. Who are we sharing this project with? Who are we sharing this information with? Is this something that we're doing for our community or just ourselves? Is this only for the teacher to see, or is this something for the world to see? And adjusting the size of your audience has a lot to do with student motivation as well, because if it's only me seeing it, I don't think they're as motivated as if they were going to show their project to the world. That would be a very big deal to them. Who chooses the resources and the materials that you're going to use in your learning activity? Is it something that the teacher brings in and says, we are doing this activity with these materials on this paper and it's going to be this color, and this is the website that you'll get your information from? Or is it something that you can slide that spectrum over to the student side of things and say, it's any material that you can find within this room, it is any website that you can find? Is that something that students are capable of doing, or do you need to dial back on student control for those that don't have the ability to find their own materials? So there's a lot of flexibility within resources and materials. Differentiation, I find, is a really interesting topic in personalized learning, because students can self-differentiate when they have some control over the learning activity. If they are given some flexibility within what material they choose, they could choose a lower level reading material. They could choose a longer timeline. They could present to a smaller audience if they're not feeling as confident. So there's so much differentiation available in personalized learning, and it really becomes kind of a seamless process. Along that line is inclusion. How do you make your learning activity appropriate for all learners? Well, if you can slide some of the dial to the student side of things, then you can be more inclusive with your entire classroom. Is this going to be culturally appropriate? Is it going to fit all abilities? Are there other differences that you need to figure out? So with full personalization, inclusion is just a natural thing that happens, because students will generally gear their work to what works for them. Depth and breadth, we talked about that a little bit already. Is this something that we're going to go in deep, or is it something that we're just getting all the basics and moving on? Or is it something that's really interesting to that one student and he would like the opportunity to dig in a little deeper? Is this conventional or innovative? So are all students working on the same task, or is there some room for exploration and creativity? Is this something that has been done before over and over, or is this something that is new to them? That chart that we just reviewed on the last 3 slides is available on my Personalized Learning website, and that's the little guy with the binoculars there. So kyliecarver.wixsite.com/personalizedlearning, and you will also be able to see, let's see if I can draw here. Down here at the bottom, there's a link to the actual research paper if you're into that kind of thing. And you will probably also want to look at this top one that talks about my personalized experience and what I found in my classroom, because there's some specific strategies that you might find useful in your classroom, especially if you're in triple grades or double grades. The other website down at the bottom, Math is a Wonderful Thing, this one I created with the help of a PLC. So we've got the girls in the picture there, and all of the materials on there. This is a work in progress. It is not quite finished yet, but you're welcome to snoop around. It's kyliecarver.wixsite.com/math, and there is a link back to the Personalized Learning, that guy there, and all of the materials that I use in my classroom. That is the piece that is sort of missing right now, so bear with me until I get it all fixed up. But this piece right here, the videos, that will be something that is quite useful to you if you teach 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 math in Saskatchewan. So originally when I designed my website for the PLC, I was having some trouble figuring out how to put the videos on and have them accessible to students. So what I ended up doing was I just built a YouTube site and all my videos are stored there. So this is actually searchable, so you don't have to memorize this big long address. If you just search up within YouTube, Kylie Carver and math, you should come up with all this. But again, there's a link within, I think within this website. So let's go have a look at those. So here is a little tour of Math is a Wonderful Thing. Within materials, like I said, this is the section that I'm still building. That was supposed to be this year's PLC, so we're getting there. This section has links to all the videos, and they are repeated here. There are links available, and there's a little bit about my classroom. This button will take you directly to my Personalized Learning website. And like I said, you can click there for the supporting research. So back to Math is a Wonderful Thing. Let's go to the videos link. So each outcome in grade 5, 6, 7, and 8 is listed here. I do have videos for grade 9, but I need my my PLC cohort to load them. And we do have some strategy videos like simple adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. So check back once in a while. There will be changes coming. But students that have access to this website can usually just press on one of the videos and you'll hear my riveting voice. So usually in every video I go through the outcomes and I read them to the students because they need to know what those mean. In most of our outcomes, the grade 7 hasn't been done yet, but most of the outcomes I've got reworded into student-friendly language, and so we'll get rid of that one. So a good assortment of videos. This works really well for students if they want to review something. They can watch that video several times, or if they're struggling with the grade 7 Cartesian plane material, maybe they need to go back to grade 6 Cartesian plane and have a quick look at that video, or maybe even back to the patterning video in grade 5. So there's a lot of adaptability and differentiation built into this concept. These videos are available any time of day on any device. You can watch them on your phone on the way to hockey. I keep stats on my YouTube to see how many hits they get, and it is growing, so kids are watching them. Let's go back here. I'll show you some of the links. So some of these are just interesting websites that I found. The students have access to this, and so these are links that they might actually use, like Mathletics. All the Saskatchewan common Mathletics assessments are online, and so students can access those any old time. And then I have a little blurb here about how things work in my classroom, and so might not pertain to you, but if you want some ideas on how it works for me, then go for it. And now I'm going to take you to the Personalized Learning website. This was the project that I built for my master's, so it is more of a professional looking site. It's not really something that students would use, but maybe more so for teachers. So within the methods, a lot of the things that I've talked about already: what is personalization, why personalize, what are some challenges and limitations, and what do I recommend? Within the personalized experience, let's just scroll down a little bit. So this talks about how I set up my math classroom to start with, and what I saw as benefits, and I saw tons of benefits. Kids really were becoming very independent. There was a lot of collaboration going on. I could see learning happening. They were engaged. It was fun. It was noisy. It was a good time. There were also quite a few challenges. One of the biggest ones was just technology. It was terrible to start with, and until I got on board with some of our tech support at the division level, things were not really working well for me. So we're in a much better place. And just when I thought things were smooth sailing, I had all of my math program materials, videos, everything was set up on OneNote, and the students all had access to that, kind of like an online textbook. It was lovely, but then this fall OneNote crashed and we couldn't get it for a month or two even, so that was a bit of a challenge. Okay, we will go to instruction. Okay, so here's an example of how our PLC team reworded some of those outcomes into student-friendly language. Here's an example of what my OneNote looked like. If you don't use OneNote, you should. It's fantastic. I love it when it's working. It's great. And I used to have all my videos linked on Office 365, and the problem with that was that students had to log in, and some of them had a real problem logging in from home, and so that's why I went to the YouTube channel. One of my most favorite activities in the math classroom is my math journal, and it's an open-ended worksheet that students fill in for each outcome, and they sort of have a discussion with each other and with me, and they work together, and they put down in an open-ended format what they've really learned about that outcome. And this is like, this tells the tale, folks. You will be able to look at it at a glance and know whether that student knows what they're doing or not. And so on this website you can click, I think there is a link just to that document. Yes, there is, down there. And let's go to assessment. So again, this is just how I set up my classroom. It works great for me. It might not work for you. But basically, I just put in 3 assignments. You can see one is called SEMA, one was called Personal Dictionary, and one was called Journal. And this was for the grade 8s, and so it was easy to keep track of their marks and see what had been filled in. So you can go back and reassess, and it's sort of formative all the way up until the end of the semester, until the end of the year. We use Mathletics a lot, and there's some assessment data within Mathletics that I found quite helpful as well. And some of the feedback and reflection, some questions that I've had from parents and students even, and different links in there. And then we have a long list of resources. The video links are quite interesting. The resources that I have listed here are websites that are dedicated to personalized learning in some way, and then this section down here of books and articles is strictly the bibliography from my research. So I'm going to take you back to the home page on this website. And and all of my contact information is there. And so if you have questions, or if you want to add anything to the website or to the research or anything like that, fill in that contact box and it will send me the message, and I will gladly help you out with whatever you need. So even though I've been doing personalized learning for a couple of years and I spent several semesters studying it at the master's level, I really feel like I'm brand new at it, and every day there's something new that I want to try, and every day there's something that I want to adjust because maybe it didn't work the way I wanted it to. But I think that's the whole essence of personalization, is what can you slide to the student's control? When are there times in your day that you can give them those moments of independence and allow them to have a choice and some freedom and some autonomy and build in some independence? Those kinds of experiences are really, really exciting for kids, and that's what gets them interested and engaged in learning. So if we always keep the dial on the teacher side of things, you're going to be bored, they're going to be bored. And so try some personalization. Even if it's uncomfortable, just give it a go. You won't be sorry. What did you learn in school today? Chances are, if you ask most kids that question, you will get a nonplussed response of nothing. I assure you, we do teach them something every day, but in this era of 21st century learning, sometimes the process is far more important than the content. The other day in math class, I witnessed a student voluntarily organizing his binder into a system that worked for him. Another figured out how to use a digital presentation website to show what she had learned in math. A grade 5 student learned to attach a document to her email. A pair of students decided to work together on the whiteboard to reinforce their skills. None of these lessons were initiated by me, other than to provide the student with the freedom to choose how they wanted to learn. It was so inspiring to see them take this initiative. Yet, the report card doesn't often reflect the soft skills that develop in the 21st century classroom: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, media literacy, etc. The curriculum hasn't changed much since I was in school. Math is still math, but how we access and process the content certainly has. The teacher is no longer the sage on the stage, the only expert in the room with the information and the skill to lead. When they tell you that they've learned nothing, what they really mean is that today they were leaders in their own learning, accessing vast amounts of information with elite technology in a collaborative community of creative geniuses. Thanks for watching.